This is our account of the visit to the Lindisfarne Crossing, Northumberland. The footage was taken on the 24th and 25th of August 2022, and then we came back again 1 year later in 2023. During this video you will see some stills and other footage that has been copied from the internet. The credit for those clips are at the end of this video. Everything else is what we filmed. So this is what the island and Causeway look like from above. The only road access to the island is over the Causeway, and for around 4 hours a day it disappears under the sea and you cannot cross. There are plenty of warning signs around, but still some fools try and cross and end up having to be rescued. The island of course is very popular and thousands visit each year. The appearance and disappearance of the Causeway is popular as people, particularly families with kids, come to see this natural free show. Looking at these maps you would expect the tide to rush in from both sides at once, along with the normal breaking waves. It doesn't. The shoreline is a natural sandbank and it takes a while for the sea to build up and then it flows over it, filling the sand and marsh areas. I would guess that 90% of the seawater invades from this point. It takes ages to flood the sands, but once it has reached a certain point it then moves very fast and covers the roadway within 1 hour of high tide. So here we are, day 1, August the 24th, 2022. This is the first time that we have ever been to this part of the country. As you can see, the tide is going out. The next day, the 25th of August, we went back to explore and experience the amazing sight of the tide creeping in. High tide for the 25th was almost 3 p.m. Unsafe crossing times were 1 p.m. until 5:45. That means you are advised to cross no later than 2 hours before high tide and 1 hour 45 minutes after high tide. We drove over to the island around 9:45 in the morning. You can see the marshland and the exposed sands as the tide is still a long way out. After exploring the island we came back to the mainland. We came back over around 11 a.m. We didn't spend a lot of time on the island itself. So 11 a.m. and coming over the crossing you can see just how huge the area is with the tide out. As we come to the refuge point there is water under the bridge section. There is always water there, and when the tide does come in the water flows from this direction rapidly and it floods the sands and marshland. Okay, 11 a.m, still 4 hours to go before high tide. We went off to get something to eat and came back a bit later to do what everyone else does, sit around, have a paddle and wait for the free show. Well, it's now 12:15. We've packed up, got out of the van and joined the other people who were already waiting for the tide to come in. 2 hours and 45 minutes before high tide. There's not a lot happening at the moment. The tide is coming in, although you really don't notice it. Rising and falling tides do not follow a linear path. That means the water level does not go from low tide to high tide at a constant rate. This tidal flow is unique as water builds up behind the sandbanks. As it builds up it flows into the bay. It starts off as a trickle and then as the sea builds more and more water floods over. It takes a long time for this to happen, yet there comes a point where the volume of the water is such that it rises very fast around the Causeway. Within 90 minutes of hitting the Causeway the road soon starts to disappear. Those that ignore the safe crossing times do not realise just how fast the water is rising, and that is why a lot of people get stranded. Simple rule is don't cross when the tide is rising. It's about 12:30 now. There is a stream of vehicles coming back to the mainland from the island. I would like to think that these drivers are all taking note of the safe crossing times and making sure they cross well before the tide comes in and cuts them off. Quite a lot of large pools of water at the moment, although not a lot of evidence of the incoming tide, but it does sneak in. 12:35. The water is on the move. Looks like someone has left a tap running. 12:48. 10 minutes have elapsed. The water running under the bridge now resembles a medium flowing stream. All around the sand and marsh areas are disappearing, creating little islands. High tide is just 2 hours and 12 minutes away. Well, it's 1:30 now. A small Tracy island surrounded by water completely disappears in less than 3 minutes. Well, we're getting on to 20 to 2. It's coming in from both sides and meeting up. Still at 22, the two streams have merged into a small lake. Well, about 5 to 2, water now starts to creep over the roadway. It takes just a few minutes to cross this part of the road. Nearly 1 hour to go to high tide. Yes, you could still take the risk and cross, but it would be very foolish to do so. Just going to dip his headlights. I see he had a bucket on front of his radiator there to let bail him out.
It's got everything in that, I think, isn't it? Brilliant.
The people enjoying seeing the tide come in and also wondering what on earth that French motorhome was doing. Of course, they ignored the warning signs, but I guess they were better equipped to get across due to the design of their vehicle. It looks to be a converted military vehicle. It does send out the wrong message to many though, as this woman soon found out. It's 12 minutes past 2. She's driving a small car and it's not designed to act like a World War II landing craft. There is less than 45 minutes to full tide. The water is almost level to the floor of her car, yet she still thinks she can cross. The only way to describe her actions is incredibly stupid. She makes it to the refuge point and decides to get out and wade across the road to see how deep the water is. Like you do. Nearly 20 past 2. She wades back to her car, turns the car around and very carefully heads back to the island. She has spent at least 5 minutes dicking about in the water, and during that time the water will have risen about 100 millimetres. If she had been another 5 minutes, her car would have flooded and she would have been well and truly stuck. This is a picture that I found on the internet. A red car has failed to make it and ended up sailing away. That could easily have been her car today. These little fellas come with us everywhere we go. Here they are, both enjoying the experience of seeing the water creep up around them. Even though they don't have a brain and are made of wool, they still had enough sense to move. But it's 2:30, 30 minutes to go to high tide, and at last all the cars have kept clear of the roadway. We didn't stop till full tide, although I'm sure that the bit of roadway next to the refuge will have been covered at full tide. So 30 minutes to go and the causeway looked like this. Here is a picture of the refuge surrounded by a high tide. Well, all that footage was taken a year ago. We came back to Northumberland again this year for another short break, again in August and literally 1 year to the date of our first visit. It is the 23rd of August 2023. First stop before we head to the campsite was, you guessed it, the Causeway. On this day the high tide was 8 p.m. Okay, we turned up 10 minutes to 7. No water on the Causeway, but you can see the tide is already coming in very fast. We are 1 hour, 10 minutes away from high tide. The tide is moving a lot faster today as it is being pushed along by strong winds from the east. Water has started to rush over the road. This clip shows just how fast the water comes in. It has taken just 3.5 minutes. The time is now 7 minutes past 7, 53 minutes to high tide. This clip lasts about 4 minutes. Just look how quickly the road disappears under the water. You would have to be crazy to try and cross now.
And all them little fish and crabs will have been waiting for.
24th of August 2023. High tide is at nearly 8:15. and it's a 4.17 metre tide. Unsafe crossing from 6:30 till 11 a.m. We parked up and we were there at 9:15. The tide is on its way out. Waiting to cross are 2 local authority vans. These vans and workers often cross to the island and know exactly when it is suitable for their vehicles. Car drivers should not think they can do the same. So these 2 vans went to cross at 9:37, which is just over 1 hour since high tide. Personally, I think that there was far too much water on the road to be driving over, but they made it. Another van driver hasn't got the patience to wait, and he also takes a risk and crosses. It is now about 5 to 10 and the ice cream van pulls up and waits for the water level to drop a bit more before he crosses. Later, another van passed the ice cream van and the car owner decided to go for it. Still a lot of water on the road. It is up to the height of the bumpers on her car. It was a silly thing for her to do and she was lucky this time. It doesn't take long for the tide to recede, and if she'd have waited another 10 minutes like we did, she could have crossed without the risk of falling in the car. Earlier I mentioned that you should never try and cross when the tide is rising. These are a few photos showing how stupid people can be and what happens if your car does get stuck. So, when the tide is rising, there are only 3 safe ways to cross. Number 1, swim. Number 2, boat. Number 3, submarine. It is a fascinating experience watching the tide eat away at the Causeway, and well worth taking the time to go and experience it yourself. But use your brain and don't be stupid. Check the safe crossing times and never ever cross on a rising tide. Thank you for watching.